Thank you, Ashutosh, RP, the Bali, that was great. There's no question that this is the most powerful marketing platform ever created. We're going to have great conversations today about video, about social, about text. But what happens when we put our earbuds in and we put this device in our pocket? And that's the new dimension of content marketing that I wanted to share with you today, about mobile moments that matter, that create what we call earfluence. Now, before I get into that, I wanted to share how we got here. I started my career about 2 decades ago during the first dot-com boom. I started a company that was in contextual advertising that was very similar to what Google AdSense is today, but a little ahead of its time. I exited that in 2003, and I found myself in Houston, Texas, in my parents' home where they just moved, sitting on their couch, and overhearing them bickering about having to travel to the Little India section of Houston in order to buy a Hindi movie DVD, which of course was pirated. So I went with them, observed the entire experience, and it taught me a really important lesson. And that whatever we're doing, it's critical to follow the consumer, observe their behavior, and empathize what they're trying to do. So 6 months later, my co-founders and I got on a plane to India. I mean, of course, we came here growing up, but didn't know anybody in the entertainment industry. And we licensed a catalog of Hindi movies from different producers, came back to the US, and launched the first ever Bollywood movies on demand service with Time Warner Cable. Went pretty well, taught us a second lesson in that if you make something easy for people, they will certainly consume more of it. And we were able to pay royalties back to content owners. We expanded upon that success and became the first company to bring Indian music onto iTunes. In 2006, had an epic meeting with Apple in 2008. Wasn't a good meeting, but it basically told us that we had to launch our own streaming service. And we did that in 2010. And just through sheer luck, we were able to do a search partnership with Google in order for JioSaavn to show up in the organic results anytime somebody was searching for music. And so we went from pretty much 0 users to 2 million overnight. And over the next 7 years, we grew by 40% annually to 20 million users in 2017. Then we started getting the phone calls from companies in Silicon Valley and in China. And look, I'm just sharing the highs with you. There's a lot of lows that we can talk about offline. But in all those conversations, the one that we were absolutely blown away by was with Jio. And everybody knows Reliance is India's most valuable company. The thing that really blew us away was their long-term vision and their thinking for India. And as big as Reliance is, it behaves very much like a startup. They challenge the status quo. They're very curious. They ask tons of questions. They move with an incredible sense of urgency still while maintaining control. They obsess about the details in order to deliver an exceptional amount of value to end consumers. And so while they've gotten up to 320 million paid subscribers now, and more than a third of that are monthly active users of JioSaavn, we realized what they were building was way more than a telco. It was a digital services lifestyle company that was giving everyday people access to educational resources, to healthcare, to job opportunities. And that 7% annual GDP growth for India could now be way more inclusive. And that's important for everybody in this room because it's creating more consumers of your goods and services. So coming back to content marketing, with these powerful devices that we have in our hands, companies can access now our most personal space. And attention is fractured. And we don't make anything easy on ourselves by accessing our phones over 70 times per day. There's more quote-unquote content that's been created over the last 2 years than the preceding years of all of mankind in history. And there's a problem. And so from a music perspective, we started from the consumer and work backwards. We built JioSaavn as an application that gave consumers choice, convenience, and control. We focused very closely on artists, whether they were household names or they were emerging talent, to be able to connect them with their fan base. And last but not least, we worked very closely with brands to be able to help them deliver relevant, contextual, useful, and timely advertising communication to our user base. And we realized that in an environment of clutter, there's a flight to trust. And the new trust is beautiful design, experience, and true focus on that consumer. Now, in the same vein, we also realized, too, that data science and personalization are the new foundations of content marketing. We have now collected about 10 trillion data points since we started streaming in 2010. I know that sounds like an absurd number, but it's not just about individual streams. It's about the time of day, the device, the gender, what's added to a playlist, the genre. There's hundreds of attributes that we're able to collect. And the thing about music across all media is that it's the only repeat use medium, right? We all listen to our favorite music over and over again. And our tastes in music are as unique as our fingerprints. And when you combine that with sophisticated algorithms and AI, you're able to deliver recommendations that are the exact song that someone would want to listen to next. And so when you're streaming at scale, some very interesting patterns emerge. This is a language chart. So when we first started streaming, we're very Hindi dominant, but as we started being more proactive in marketing, especially in the urban markets, we saw English start to bloom. And ever since the Jio transaction, we've seen now regional languages across all genres really start to take flight. Here is a mood chart. On your left is ages 14 to 24. On the right is 44 to 54. And oftentimes, the mood of the country is mirrored by what people are listening to. So this is actually showing, as people get older, they listen to less and less romantic music, and it seems to be, taken over by devotional. Oftentimes, a lot of people do gravitate to certain artists, and that's by age. But once in a generation, there are really talented creators out there that kind of transcend all age groups. In our case, it happens to be the very talented Arijit Singh. And creators are a very important part of the ecosystem for us. We're very data informed to kind of determine which artists that we should be spending our time with, and then working very closely with them, employing our own taste and judgment to figure out which one of their releases or which one of their tracks that we should actually take live to market. You all may have heard of a song called Bom Diggy. It was the most streamed song in 2018 and came out of our Artist Originals artist development platform. And most recently, we did a track with Marshmello and Pritham called Biba. In addition, there are hundreds of interests like comedy, entertainment, sports, and history that are of interest to everyday consumers. And every podcast itself has a niche audience, but because of limitations in bandwidth and traditional media, a lot of these interests go underserved. And so from the podcasting world, whether a show has 10,000 listeners or 10 million, they all count because that attention is undivided and the audience is self-selecting. And it creates this so-called theater of the mind where individuals start to think of images of what they're listening to and those associated stories. So what does this mean for brands? Deloitte says there's will be around 300 million unique music streamers in 2020. We have about 2/3 of that market and expect to continue that share. Ironically, when people think about music, they think about YouTube. But there are actually more music audio streams than music video streams globally. And the rate of growth of music audio is higher, 45% versus 35% for music video. Now, Nielsen also says that music is the top activity on smartphones when it comes to just leisure activities and hobbies. Music's interesting because it's one of those only mediums that can be a true daily companion. We can tell by looking at our data and streaming when people are getting up, when they're commuting, when they're at work, when they're on the treadmill, when they're working out, or when they're hanging out with friends. And 8 times out of 10, this consumption is happening when it's physically impossible for them to be consuming visual media. And we're able to deliver on these ultra-mobile moments and deliver superior reach. Now, in our journey, we've identified just a handful of ways we think that brands can actually influence and shape culture. And that's how they can be curators, creators, and collaborators. Bira made a strategic bet to align with hip-hop as a music genre. They felt that the hip-hop lifestyle best represented the brand that they wanted to build. And they felt the audience overall in India was underserved. And so we went through our 45 million songs, came up with a series of hip-hop playlists and radio stations, created a brand channel that was off of the JioSaavn homepage, and essentially made Bira synonymous with hip-hop in the country. And there's a short video here that I wanted to show you.
Over 90% of JioSaavn's users fall in the 18 to 25 age group and love Bira 91. With Hip Hop Movement, a nationwide integrated campaign, JioSaavn was putting hip-hop in the spotlight. Bira 91 partnered with JioSaavn to build an immediate connect between the brand and hip-hop. JioSaavn launched the Bira 91 hip-hop channel and partnered with Bira 91 to curate hip-hop on the app. Through aggressive media placements, well-curated playlists, and 360-degree marketing, Bira 91 became the definitive authority on what was hot in hip-hop. Bira 91's channel had 4.5 million user visits, with listeners spending more than 17.5 million minutes within the brand's music environment.
Now, Amazon took a little bit of a different approach. They've been making pretty heavy investments in Amazon Prime Video, and their challenge has been how can they expose more of that paid content outside of the paywall. And so for their show, 4 More Shots Please, we actually helped them create a podcast called Calling the Shots, which was conversationally very similar to what that video program actually had. We made it available on JioSaavn, and the results were pretty strong. About 3 million people actually were exposed to the program. It led to about double the standard rate for Nielsen when it came to raising awareness. And almost 100% of the people associated the podcast with the actual program, leading to a higher likelihood that people would convert to Amazon Prime or be more engaged if they were existing consumers.